Welcome to the Data4God interview series. It's a pleasure. Thank you all so much for joining us. I get a chance to talk to one of the people I look up to in the world of data science actually today. And so I get a chance to talk to Dean Abbott. Dean, welcome.
It's great to be here. Especially after the first conversation we had, it was just so enjoyable to find another believer and have shared experiences about what our lives are like in analytics. So it's a real pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, sure. It is a pleasure. Thank you again for reaching out and agreeing to do this. This is an amazing thing. So thank you again.
You're
Well,
welcome.
sure. Let me introduce Dean a little bit here. So, Dean is the co founder and chief data scientist at Smarter HQ, a Wonderkind company. Dean is an internationally recognized expert and innovator in data science and predictive analytics with more than 3 decades, see how we snuck in how old you are, of experience solving problems in customer analytics, fraud detection, risk modeling, text mining, survey analysis, and much more. He's frequently included in the lists of pioneering and influential data scientists. Dean is also the author of Applied Predictive Analytics and co-author of the IBM SPSS Modeler Cookbook. He's a popular keynote speaker and workshop instructor at conferences worldwide and serves on advisory boards for the UC Irvine Predictive Analytics and UC San Diego Data Science Certificate programs. He holds a bachelor's degree in computational mathematics from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and a master of applied mathematics from the University of Virginia. ACC represented well here. I like that. Always good. So, Dean, thank you again. And then let's just jump right into the interview. So, people in data science probably know who you are, or at least they should. All right, just throwing it out there. But let's talk about the other side of Dean. Can you introduce the audience a little bit about your journey of faith?
Well, and I think it is interesting because I love doing data science. I love the math and everything. When I say I'm a math major, most people first say things like, "Oh, well, math was the thing I really hated the most when I was in high school," that kind of thing,
Yes.
which is fine. But that's not defining of
Mhm.
of who I am. Really, what defines who I am is who I am in God's sight,
Mm.
who I am in the journey, understanding what Christ has done for me.
Mhm.
So I grew up in the church. My parents were both Christians.
Mhm.
My grandparents were all believers, and so I always was connected with the church. And I don't remember exactly when I made a confession of
Mhm.
faith. It's like I always believe from the way I remember my life. In fact, I remember when I made a decision for Christ when a missionary came to visit my church, like one of those VBS things,
Oh,
and they asked
yes.
to come forward, and I went forward. I got my Gospel of John from the
Mhm.
pastor, which was super cool. And I remember praying after that and feeling
Mhm.
really good about it. But after about a week, I was thinking, nothing really seemed like it had changed fundamentally. And
Mhm.
I think it's because that was the first time I really went forward, but the renewal in the heart had already taken place.
Yeah.
But like a lot of us, when we're going through life, we're kind of meandering our way through, and as we're trying to understand what it means to be a Christian.
Mhm.
And so, it really was in college that I kind of you hear people talk about making faith their own. It's not
Yeah.
just the faith of their parents and growing up, and
Mhm.
really had to you come up against competing worldviews,
Mhm.
different viewpoints, and just the pull of culture to slide
Mhm.
away from Christ and slide away from the church. And it was really through a dear friend who talked to me till like 3 in the morning about what it means to be a Christian. And I was like, yeah, yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. And then I was thinking, so why am I not living it if I really
Mhm.
believe it? And that's really the turning point for me in my life. But it's for most of us, it is a journey. It's not like one thing where all of a sudden you're good. I mean, it's a day by day
Mhm.
living out your faith because you know it. You have to stay good with God,
Mhm.
confess your sin,
Mhm.
read the Word. Those are daily experiences. Praying daily.
Mhm.
Those are all important in the journey.
No, I agree. Yeah, it's very few of us have that Saul to Paul like transitional moment, right? Where it's like, and now you're blind. If we
Yeah.
very few of us have that notion. So you're right. It's that notion of that journey and that growth as we discover, like you said, that ownership of faith. Like you
Mhm.
own the faith now, as compared to you see it from an outside perspective.
Yes, And I used to always feel bad about my testimony because it's like I don't have one of the, like you said. I love how you split that, the Saul to Paul kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like, you hear people with just such dramatic
Mm,
testimonies. But I remember talking to some of those guys over the
mm,
years, and they said, "Oh, I know it's a wonderful testimony, but I wish I had your testimony,
mm,
where you never had to experience just the depravity
mm.
of what sin does to us, how it destroys us."
Yeah.
And it is true. So I mean, but God has a plan for each of us, and
Hmm.
so for some of us, it's like me. Others, they have that dramatic change in
Hmm.
their heart, and God uses both to advance His kingdom.
No, agreed. Definitely. Definitely. Now, some people seem surprised when I tell them I'm both a Christian and a data scientist. Do you have any experiences that are similar to that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's really it's funny that some people will exactly have that kind of puzzled look,
Mm,
like, or especially once you a lot of conferences I speak at, you
mm,
get a lot of especially advanced education
mm,
folks, PhDs or master's
mm,
degree, and a lot of them have never encountered a Christian
mm,
who thinks at that level about
mm.
the field. And so, yeah, I definitely get that kind of thing. They're really surprised and say, but doesn't being a Christian mean you've got to kind of check science at the door? And like, oh, it is so the opposite of that.
I
It's
know.
like the more I understand about the way the world works, the more I understand mathematics, the more convinced I am that
Mm,
God has to be behind all this. I remember even in high school, I haven't thought about this for years. I was taking AP physics in high school,
mhm,
and the teacher never said anything about his faith or anything. I don't really know exactly where he stands, except that he was talking about physics, and I think we're talking about maybe is something related to string theory or multidimensional space anyway. And he just said, kind of as a throwaway comment, he said, and the more we discover this as physicists, the more it's clear that there has to be a God behind all
mm.
this. I was like, and I was a Christian at the time. I was like, that is so cool. I'm so glad to hear somebody else say this because you're right. You don't hear
Yeah.
that in typical circles. So I think as believers and scientists, data scientists or hard scientists, we can stand firm that God made all these things.
Mhm,
He made everything we see, and He made it in a rational and consistent way.
mhm.
And that really enables scientific discovery
Yeah.
because it's there's consistency there. We could follow the scientific method,
Mhm,
and God is consistent yesterday, today, and forever. And the way He built this world, it's the same.
mhm.
It's the way the blueprint that He used, and He made it, and He sustains it. So if nothing else, it's easier, I think, to be a Christian once the more you understand about science.
No, I agree. I love how you brought up that physics story. I have a friend who's a nuclear physicist, and he tells me all the time, he's like, the more I get down at the molecular level of the world, the more I see this is God created. Like, this is nothing that is just by chance or by randomness. So I love how you mentioned that. See, all the physics people, apparently they know about this, and we just never knew it. So that's good.
Yeah, it's true. I remember reading Stephen Barr in
Hmm.
a periodical called First Things that I still read to this day. But he had an article there talking about the anthropic principle with all the constants, the physical constants that have to appear within such a incredibly small tolerance,
Hmm.
like gravity and all these physical constants. And if they weren't exactly that, nothing would exist.
Exactly.
And of course, if you don't believe that God designed all this, then you've got to believe somehow it happened by chance,
Hmm.
or you have got to go to the multiverse theory or something else to
Yeah.
say, well, this is just one of an infinite number of universes, which
Mhm.
always strikes me as a matter of incredible faith to
Yeah.
believe in an infinite number of universes that we can never prove. So
Mhm.
it's fascinating to me but that's where you have to go because it's
Mhm.
so unlikely that all the stuff we see could just happen by chance.
I love how you mentioned that notion of it being faith, because I think a lot of people, when they separate out the idea of science and data, say that it's really faith versus not faith. No, you have faith in something. Whether you have faith in, like what you described, this notion of an infinite set of multiverses, or you have faith in a God that created this one universe, you're putting your faith behind something. You're putting your knowledge behind it. So I love how you can't sort of just have a cop out of, well, I'm not a faithful person. It's like, oh, no, no, you believe in something. It's just a matter of what you believe in. And that's where, things go awry a little bit for people, I think.
Yeah, I really think so. But I love having those conversations with those
Yes.
who are who are willing to discuss and
Yeah.
open-minded. They're really fascinating discussions with really thoughtful scientists who have not landed
Mhm.
yet. And I pray for them that they will
Mhm.
just, that God will open their eyes. We read God lifting the veil from their eyes or turning their heart of stone to a heart of flesh
Mhm.
for that day when they can see that. But until then, we can have really
Oh yeah.
positive, entering discussions
Mhm.
with folks like that and help them see that, our side on the
Mhm.
theistic side, or more precisely for Christians,
Mhm.
with Christ who has redeemed us, which is
Mhm.
a different part of the story aside from
Yeah.
just who made it all. But you can have really good and challenging and engaging conversations, and in a winsome way. I mean, I don't view this as a battle that we've got to like
No.
slug it out with our colleagues in the
No.
field.
I agree. I agree. And speaking of the field of data science, so how do you connect that idea of God to data as well as your career? So we've been talking a little bit about this idea of how we sort of perceive data and God as not being two separate things. How do you incorporate God into data? How do you incorporate God into your career in general?
Yeah, there's some things that are
Mhm.
general across all fields,
Mhm.
certainly about being, everything we do, we work as unto the Lord.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
we apply ourselves well. We are honorable, we're honest. We don't, I mean, my general consulting philosophy is to undersell and over deliver.
Mhm.
And to remain humble that we don't know everything.
Agreed.
So there are some Christian principles which apply well to any field. But I think more specifically with mathematics, I remember when I was in graduate school, the chair of the pure math department at UVA was a man named James Taylor.
Mhm.
And so, for anybody who was at UVA, they would have known him years ago. He retired probably 20 plus years ago. So, all the new people, they'll have no idea. But anyway, James Taylor, not the singer, the mathematician from the UK. He had a very strong British accent. But he was also an elder in my church. I
Mhm.
went to Trinity Presbyterian Church in Charlottesville, Virginia at that time,
Mhm.
and he was a wonderful man. And he would always kid me because I was in the applied math department, applied math, not pure math. And he'd
Of
say, "Of
course.
course, you're not a proper mathematician," because I was only an applied mathematician. So he would chide me like that. But we had a good relationship. But
Mhm.
I asked him once about that, like, how do you incorporate
Mhm.
mathematics? Because it seems so theoretical and it's just
Mhm.
cognitive and all. And he said something to me that I've really carried with my whole career. He said, Dean, when we discover truths,
Mhm.
mathematical truths, whenever I prove a theorem, I'm uncovering another aspect of how God made the universe, this universe we
Yeah.
live in. And that includes the rational side and the mathematical side, because mathematics is a series of logical
Mhm.
constructs that work so well. We can prove a theorem, and when you've proved it, it's true.
Yeah.
And we're uncovering the truth of God when we're doing that. I
Yes.
thought that was so interesting. And so on the data science side, when I'm exploring data, I'm uncovering aspects of human behavior.
Mhm.
Or when I'm doing fraud detection, it's still human behavior, but the way systems and organizations work. Or if I'm doing like hard drive fault detection, you're
Mhm.
uncovering the physics of what's going on and trying to make inferences about that. And I really view it like that.
Mhm.
I'm uncovering another aspect of this world that God created, and it's fascinating
Yeah.
because people are so complex. Because I do mostly customer analytics now.
Mhm.
People are complex, and we can only measure some things that they do, with the data we collect. But you're still uncovering the way people behave. And I know when you see something, you're kind of like, oh, that's really interesting that people do this and that, and it's a real pattern. It's like
Yeah.
not just one or two people, but that is the trend
Mhm.
of how people behave. It's really fascinating way to uncover the way people are operated, and ultimately the way God created people.
No, I agree. It's like we're all connected in some way, shape,
Yeah.
or form, huh?
Yes. Somehow that's true.
Somehow. So, all right. So, continuing down the path about talking about your career, have you had any struggles in your career because of your faith? Or, and flip side of that, have you had any great successes or blessings in your career because of your faith? I'd love to hear sort of that side of it.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever been a time when I've had like severe persecution
Mhm.
because of my faith or anything like that. So I've been blessed in that way. Though it has been encouraging because, as you mentioned, a lot of us who are believers in the field don't know how many there are who
It's
are like
true.
us. Because
Yeah.
and also because when I speak at conferences
Mhm.
and all, I don't lead with that I'm a believer, though I try to make that connection in
Mhm.
some ways, sometimes subtle ways, or when I'm speaking to someone one on one,
Mhm.
I try to make sure they understand that I'm coming from a Christian context. So I may
Yeah.
talk about my church or
Mhm.
may talk about my faith in God and how that informs some of the ways I behave.
Mhm.
Just, not to preach, but just so they have context, so they
Yeah.
understand why I do the things I do.
Mhm.
But every once in a while things happen. Like I remember after I wrote my book, and in
Mhm.
the acknowledgments of the book, I just have a very brief statement about thanking God for how He
Mhm.
providentially put me in this position.
Mhm.
I mean, when I look and see how God prepared me for data science,
Mhm.
I'm just amazed because it's not like I was wise in any way. It's not like I went to a college thinking I'm going to do all these things or
Mhm.
grad school. I didn't have the mapping in my head of where I was going to be in 10 years or 20 years.
Mhm.
I just kept on doing what I thought I should do, and God blessed and honored that. But there's one man after I wrote the book I met. He's from Switzerland. So I was speaking at a conference in Berlin,
Mhm.
Germany. And he came up to me. He says, "Oh, I'm so glad to meet you. I got a copy of your book, and I read in the acknowledgments that you're a Christian." I said, "Yeah, I am a Christian." He goes, "You are the first Christian I've ever met in the field, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
so encouraging to know that there's another Christian." And so then we were able to talk about our faith,
Yeah.
encourage each other. I was hearing his testimony, he heard mine. It really is encouraging to hear that because, we are connected in that way across that in that situation across countries. I've met men in the field from
Mhm.
multiple continents, from Asia, from
Mhm.
Africa, and it's really encouraging. But these are my brothers and sisters
Yes.
in Christ, and as soon as you start talking, you have that connection, and you know how that is. You have
Yeah.
that connection with somebody because of that shared faith. I mean, you can talk about biblical principles, and they know and they get it.
Yes.
And there's just there's one way there's just a sense of relief and just
Mhm.
unity that you have
Mhm.
from that kind of conversation you can have with them. It really is wonderful. So
Mhm.
I do encourage everyone who's out there who's a believer to come out of the shadows,
Mhm.
to somebody make yourself known,
Mhm.
because it really is an encouragement to the others of us who are out there.
No, I agree. I remember the very first time that I found out I wasn't like the only statistician Christian that was out there. It was something where I forget the exact premise of the email, but it was something where I was introduced to a Christian professor at another university, and I was like, "Wow, this is amazing!" And I peppered him with questions. I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" I much like the gentleman from Switzerland with you. It's like, "You're a Christian. This is awesome. How do you do this? How do you even compare data and statistics and God and
Mhm.
all these things?" And again, we had a conversation, and Bobby and I still talk today. And it's one of those things where, like you said, you have that connection with people where you're like, I feel like I can open up completely to you because you're my brother or sister. And now we can have this talk. And so
Yeah.
I agree. And I think that's what the premise of all of this is to try and help people, encourage them to sort of come out and just talk about their faith. So that's
Mhm.
awesome to hear. That is awesome to hear.
Yeah, it is good, and I have that experience more and more now with friends, people I've met along the way, and I always love that very first moment where it clicks. We understand where we're
Yes.
coming from as Christians. It's like, this is so cool, especially that combination those with both this because I don't know, like in your church, I don't know how many people are close to your field. I mean, in my church, there's nobody who's like a mathematician. So there's some
Yeah, yeah.
scientists in at church, which is really nice to talk to. But whenever there's a mathematician that comes or a statistician who comes by and you connect with them, it really is an encouragement because it does help
Yeah.
when we're doing our day-to-day work. I mean, we want to be honest, honorable,
Mhm.
and all that we do, and
Yes.
not overstate. I mean, and there are ethical issues that we have to go through
Yes.
as data scientists, and it's good to have other people we can bounce ideas off of who understand the field.
Exactly. And then understand, like you said, the context of it, right? We are working for God in everything that we do. And we have to keep that in mind. And not everyone understands that. And so when you
Mhm.
make decisions that may be counter to what the world would say you should do, you're like, well, but there's something I have a higher calling I have to answer to more than anything else.
Yeah,
So I agree.
yeah,
I,
that's really true.
so, Dean, let's sort of wrap things up a little bit. What are some things we can pray about for you?
I think For me, always when I'm speaking
Mhm.
publicly and engaging with a lot of people, to be wise about what to
Mhm.
say, when to say it. Uh, Also, there are so please continue. If anyone prays for that, that would be wonderful. And just as with all of us, our colleagues in the field. I mean, there are many people I know. We talk
Mhm.
periodically, and just for wisdom there too, because
Mhm.
when we're sharing the burdens with each other, to be wise and
Yeah.
encouragement. And I don't know if you have this kind of experience too, but the more people you meet, the more difficult it is to stay engaged with a lot of people.
Yes.
And so we have limited time. So, I try to be wise with the time and try to be as giving as I can, but
Yeah.
there's a limit to how much can be done. My For the sake of my wife or other people out there as well, so that I really need to be, I'm really responsible for. So,
Mhm.
yeah, just wisdom. That's probably the most important thing to pray for me at this time.
I'd love it. Perfect. I will add you to my prayer list, and I'm sure people at home will do the same. So,
Thank you.
sure, Dean, thank you so much again for coming out and talking with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to be able to talk with you.
Real pleasure. I am
Mhm.
so glad to do this, and best of success with this. May God
Thank you.
bless this ministry that will be I'm sure, I'm convinced, it's going to be a big encouragement to us.
Well, thank you very, very much. Thank you. And to everyone at home, thank you again for coming out. Take care, and God bless.